Hey, how's it going? I've recently beaten the Elder Scrolls Chapter 2 Daggerfall after a number of so-called failed attempts, and boy, what a trip. Daggerfall is an immersive and deep first-person RPG. There's so much you can see, do, explore, and battle, but for the first-timer, Daggerfall can be very intimidating, which is why I'm making this series, to help first-timers understand what they're doing and how to succeed in High Rock, the world of Daggerfall. Firstly, Daggerfall is free. You can download it directly from Bethesda, and I'm going to include links in the description to a bunch of useful stuff, including where you can download Daggerfall from. I'm not going to walk you through setup because Bethesda already does that wonderfully for you. If you follow the PDF they provide, you'll have Daggerfall running in no time. I'm also going to include a link that already has Daggerfall and DOSBox already set up for you. When I played, I just used Bethesda, which means typing this into DOSBox every time you play, but you get used to it. Before you start Daggerfall, I'm going to recommend you download and read the official manual that came with the game. That's also in the description, and it's a really high quality manual. It'll help you immensely if you read it beforehand or while playing. Maybe slap it on your phone and read it on the John or something. And that's what I did. Similarly, I'll be linking a copy of the infamous Beginner's Guide to Daggerfall, and that has way more information in it than I could ever provide. And finally, get like a notebook or something to write stuff down in. More on this later, but you'll often come across quests and locations or people's names that you'll need to know and never be able to remember without writing them down. Trust me on this one. As we get into character creation, feel free to pause the video often to follow along and check other resources if you're so inclined. Once you're all set up and in-game, let's get to making a new character. The first thing you'll see when you go to character creation is the continent of Tamriel. Here, you'll choose your character's race. Each race has its own benefits, and for that, I'll direct you to the Daggerfall user guide or to the wiki to see what you like. Again, link in the description. If you're already a fan of the series, you probably already know what you want to be. And while there are no wrong answers, the best race in Daggerfall is probably the High Elf, because they have immunity to paralysis, one of the most annoying effects in the whole game. After you've picked your race, you'll pick your class. You can answer 10 questions for a fun personality type quiz, pick from a list of canned classes, or at the bottom there's custom to create your own. I suggest creating your own as it gives you the most freedom to have exactly the character you'd like. There's a lot going on this screen, but just bear with me here. Let's start with skills. Unlike most RPGs, but like most Elder Scrolls games, you don't level up by defeating enemies, at least not directly. Instead, you level up by using your skills. Your skills, obviously, determine how good you are at that thing. Here's the most important thing to take away here. Your primary skills are the most important ones, the ones you'll be using the most and will want the biggest head start to. Then those are followed by your major skills, and finally, your minor skills. So what should you decide on? Let's take a look. Feel free to check the Daggerfall user guide for more detailed information. Firstly, you've got your weapon skills. These are archery, axe, blunt weapon, hand-to-hand, long blade, and short blade. You should be able to figure out what does what. You're definitely going to want at least one of these as your primary skills. If you take too many weapon skills, you won't be able to specialize in anything, and you'll have a harder time trying to level up both skills. Hand-to-hand is pretty rough in this game, and there aren't any weapons to supplement it, so I would advise steering clear of hand-to-hand unless you'd really like a challenge. Archery is a good pick to complement your melee weapon choice, maybe in the major or minor slots. Next, the magics. Alteration, Destruction, Illusion, Mysticism, Restoration, and Thaumaturgy. Even if you don't want to play a spell slinger, there are a couple of really useful spells that warrant nabbing at least one of these skills as a primary or at least a major. Plus you'll have a high enough skill to join the ever-important Mages Guild, but more on guilds later. The schools of magic in question are Mysticism for recall, allowing you to instantly return to a certain point, namely the beginning of a dungeon, Thaumaturgy for levitating, Alteration for water breathing, or Restoration for, obviously, healing yourself. Next we have our combat skills, namely backstabbing, critical strike, and dodging. All useful skills in their own right, and any melee class should aim to slot critical strike as a primary or major. The bonus crits are really useful early game, and will level up on their own pretty regularly. Next, the movement skills. Climbing, jumping, running, stealth, and swimming. These skills are all useful to have, but not as much more than a minor skill. Climbing is a ton of fun, and if you're like me and run everywhere, you'll level up running in no time. Stealth is also nice, but you'll have to pair it in some way with backstabbing for the best rewards. We have 2 miscellaneous skills here that I couldn't fit anywhere, and I want to talk about them before I move on to the most useless category. We have Lockpick, Pickpocket, and Medical. Lockpicking is decent, but pretty much only if you're going to make burglary in towns a pastime of yours. And locked doors can also be busted down with brute force, albeit at the cost of your weapon's durability. Pickpocket is completely useless for the vast majority of the time, pretty much only useful to get into the Thieves Guild. You'll rarely pilfer anything worth keeping. Medical allows you to recover more health while resting, which will level just fine on its own and not really make too much of a difference. Hard pass. Finally, the most useless skills, language. We've got Centurion, Daedric, Dragonish, Etiquette, Giantish, Harpy, Impish, Mercantile, Nymph, Orcish, Spriggan, and Streetwise. Mercantile is arguably the most useful here, helping you barter for better prices. Etiquette and Streetwise are next, as they'll help you get information from NPCs a little easier. Finally, the remainder of the language skills are all the language of monsters you'll encounter, and all they do is prevent them from attacking you. It's very likely you'll never even see a Centaur, Nymph, or Spriggan, so most of these speech skills are completely useless. Have you thought about what kind of character you want to play? Place your skills down and let's see how you did. I've decided that I want to create a paladin. So I've decided for my primary skills to be blunt weapon, restoration, and critical strike. For my major skills, I went with dodging, mysticism, and thaumaturgy. For my minors, I decided on climbing, running, alteration, stealth, mercantile, and etiquette. I've got my primary weapon and important magics in place, as well as some combat skills to back me up. Finally, I've got some minor skills to help me navigate and roleplay a little bit, mercantile and etiquette to help me interact with nobles. Now that we've decided on our skills, it's time to edit our base attributes. First, a very brief overview. Strength is going to determine how hard you hit and how much you can carry, and is used in a formula with endurance to govern your fatigue. Intelligence is your magic points. Willpower determines your magic resistances. Agility governs your bonus to both hit and evade or block. Endurance governs your health and again your fatigue. Personality deals with how people deal with you. And speed is your movement and attack speed, and luck has a small hand in all things. So your base stats start at 50, and every 10 in either direction gives you a plus or minus 1. So having a 40 in strength gives you a minus 1 damage, while having 60 agility gives you plus 1 to hit and evade or block. Now, these are just your base stats, not your final stats when we actually enter the game. This just gives us a chance to change them a little. You have 400 points to distribute, with all of them starting at 50 and eventually averaging at 50. So if you want to start with a plus 10 in something, you'll also have to lose 10 in another stat. Luck and personality are the most commonly sacrificed stats, as they have very little importance on gameplay. So for my paladin, I lost 10 points in each and put them in strength and intelligence, for damage and magic points. Next, let's talk about special advantages and disadvantages and the effect on your character. See that dagger under skill advancement for class? That's how easy or hard it is for your character to gain skill points, and therefore, level up. As you add advantages or disadvantages, that dagger will rise or fall. By adding advantages, you can make your character really powerful, but take a long time to level up, or very gimped, but level up very quickly. I personally like to aim more towards average to easy, but let's take a look at how editing these advantages and disadvantages affect our character and what we should take. Personally, I like to start with disadvantages, and then see how many advantages I can add to level out the dagger. Taking a look at the disadvantages you can add to your character, it's all pretty self-explanatory. Take a few minutes to look through, and again, the Daggerfall user guide can give you help if you're unsure of what does what, but I'll also provide a quick overview. Critical weakness and low tolerance are very dangerous disadvantages to take. You'll take a lot of damage from the agent you select or become easily diseased, poisoned, or paralyzed. A cool loophole you can take though is a critical weakness or low tolerance to paralysis if you chose High Elf. Since you're already immune, you can lower that difficulty dagger for free. Damage will cause you to take damage whether you're in holy places or in sunlight. If you never set foot in a temple or desert area fighters guilds, you'll never have to worry about that, but sunlight is probably not a good one to take for the first time player. NPCs only walk around during the day, which you'll have to talk to about certain quests, people, or locations. Also, you'll have to travel under the cover of night, meaning you'll have to climb city walls to get into major cities, seeing as you'll arrive when the gate is closed. Darkness-powered magery is actually a decent disadvantage to take, because whenever you see in darkness in the advantages and disadvantages, darkness simply means not in direct sunlight, meaning whenever you're indoors or in a dungeon is when that takes effect. You'll rarely be casting in direct sunlight, so if you need some disadvantages, this isn't a bad one to take. And if you don't plan on using magic at all, may as well have a disadvantage that won't really affect you. Light-powered magery, on the other hand, can cause some troubles for a caster. Next, we have the forbidden disadvantages. Taking one of these means you won't be able to equip whatever you've decided to forbid your character. You can still buy, sell, and carry the item, but you cannot equip it. For armor, forbidding chain or leather will make the early game a bit tougher, but you'll forget about it after a few levels on, and taking forbidden plate will make the late game pretty rough, but have no effect on the early game. Forbidding all the shields is a good idea if you never plan on using them, if you have two-handed weapons or just a straight spellcaster. For weapons, I recommend you restrict the weapons you're not going to use. Do yourself a huge favor though, and don't restrict short blade. More on that soon. Forbidden materials makes you unable to equip certain weapons or armor crafted with a certain material. Some enemies can't be harmed unless you have a high enough quality of material. The only material I would really consider restricting is Orcish, simply because Orcish gear is so rare. Also, for the beginner, don't restrict ebony, and again, more on that soon. Taking inability to regen spell points is a huge detriment to spellcasters. You won't regain any points while resting. You'll need to drink a potion or use spell absorption. If you don't plan on using magic at all, feel free to take this one. Phobias are really rough disadvantages to take, because it means you'll take more damage from, do less damage, and have worse accuracy against whichever enemy you so choose. Take this one with extreme caution. Now that we've taken some disadvantages, let's take a look at special advantages. Acute hearing means you'll hear enemies from further away. Meh. Adrenaline rush means you'll get a boost in your combat skills when you're low on health. Not super worth it in my opinion. Athleticism means it'll take you longer to tire out your stamina meter. I rarely ever have an issue with stamina, so I'd advise against it. Bonus to hit is pretty cool if you're role-playing a bounty hunter or something, but otherwise, meh. Expertise in is a great advantage to take for your primary weapon skill. That'll give you more raw damage, a must for any melee class. And it doesn't raise the dagger that much. Immunity obviously grants you immunity to an agent. This is a very strong advantage, so expect your dagger to shoot way up if you use it. Increased magery is a must if you plan to use magic regularly. This will increase the amount of magic points you'll get in reference to your intelligence attribute. Rapid healing affects how quickly you heal while resting, and regenerate health causes constant healing under the selected condition. While these seem useful, it means you'll be resting less often and have less of a chance to raise your skills and thus level up. You see, your skills only level up when you rest. Also, as your HP gets higher later in the game, you'll find these two advantages being less and less useful. Resistance is a lesser version of the immunity advantage. And finally, spell absorption absorbs spells and returns their magic points to you. If you've decided to take the disadvantage of being unable to regen your magic points, you're going to want this. Be warned, however, that if you absorb magic points past your maximum, you'll take magic burn overflow damage. This can be super dangerous when you fight foes that do nothing but sling spells. If you want, you can also control the amount of HP you'd like to earn per level. I think 8 is a good place to keep it, but it's also a good way to move the difficulty dagger in the desired direction. For my paladin, I decided to restrict axe, long blade, and missile weapons, seeing as paladins traditionally only use blunt weapons, and that's what I'd like to specialize in. And for my advantages, I took expertise in blunt weapon, and increased magery times 1.5 to supplement the kind of character I want to play. My dagger ended up practically right on average, exactly where I wanted it. The last thing we can do on this page, besides name our class, is edit our starting reputations. Everything starts at 0, and if you add a point somewhere, you must subtract another elsewhere. Since my paladin is well-to-do, I'm going to give them a 1 to merchants and nobles, but -2 to the underworld. Seedy thief types will vilify my goody two-boots paladin. After this, you'll be asked if you want to answer some questions or quick start. Always opt to answer the questions so you know what bonuses you're going to get and items you may start with. These answers generally directly affect your skills and starting inventory, so choose wisely. When you have the option to select an item or starting gift to start with, always choose the ebony dagger, unless there's another weapon of higher standing. For example, my paladin got offered an elven flail, and I know I'll get more mileage out of that. There is an imp in the starting dungeon that you need at least steel to fight, and having that ebony dagger will ensure that you can fight it, and any other creature that is immune to lesser materials, especially if you don't find anything good while exploring. More on materials in a future video. After you've answered your questions, you'll name your character and pick a face. Then, you'll get your attributes rolled randomly based on what you've set your base attributes at. You can then add some bonus points to the attributes of your choosing. Remember that you'll see the results every multiple of 10, so try to even out your attributes if you can. Feel free to re-roll as much as you like until you have satisfactory attributes to work with. Next, you'll apply some bonus points to your skills. You may be able to see the results of some of your origin story answers here. Reflexes just determine how fast the monsters interact with you. It only affects the difficulty dagger very minorly. For a first-time player getting to know the controls in the game, average is just fine. Once you're happy with your character, it's time to jump into the world of Daggerfall. Next episode, I'll go over controls, how to deal with your first dungeon, and your first steps into the outside world of High Rock. Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more Cyberphile content. And if you liked this video, show me with that little thumbs up button. If you liked this video, you might like one of my other videos. You can click right on the boxes to jump to them. Cyberphile, offline.